Welcome to Healing Wisdom, a Thursday morning talk show featuring guests sharing their stories and knowledge. We discuss the healing aspects of the arts, metaphysics, social justice, and adventure through all types of terrain. So join me, Pandora Peoples, here on WOMR 92.1 FM in Provincetown and WFMR 91.3 FM in Orleans. We're streaming worldwide at WOMR.org. Our theme music is provided by Mason. You can find her website at masonmusic.com. That's MAESYN. Hello out there. Hello. I'm so happy to be speaking with director, cinematographer, editor Alex Pritz. We're speaking about his documentary, The Territory. The Territory is screening at the Provincetown Film Festival, and folks can go to provincetownfilm.org for the screening on Friday at 2 p.m. at Water's Edge. I'm really happy to be speaking with you about this really important story. It affects us all. It's related to climate change and carbon releases in the rainforest. This is a story of an indigenous group in Brazil fighting the government led by Jair Bolsonaro and farmers who are burning down and claiming formerly protected lands. So can you share how you first became involved in this story of the Uruauau?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And thank you so much for having us here and giving us this platform to talk about this. It's, really important, as you said. And I got involved in this story through Nadinia, who's a protagonist of the film, an environmental activist whose work I had studied, read about, listened to for a long time and really admired. She's sort of this godmother of environmental protection and an advocate for indigenous rights. And looking at the elections in Brazil and the way that they were headed, understood that her work was going to become much more difficult really quickly if Bolsonaro was elected. Brazil has like this runoff election system. So you can tell based on polling, who's really in the lead quite early. And so began a conversation with her about her work and flew down to meet her on a one-way ticket, met Gabriel Uchida, a Brazilian producer who's really the heart and soul of the film in many ways. And through Nadinia, after Bolsonaro took office, her job is really filling the vacuum left by a government that isn't really interested in continuing to protect the rainforest. And so just 10 days after Bolsonaro was elected, there was a major invasion on one of these indigenous territories. And Nadinia raced down there to try to help, sound the alarm. And that was the Uruauau territory. And so I was with her and met the Uruauau community in this moment of real crisis. But then after pulling back and looking at the footage and talking with Nadinia more, understood just how important the Uruauau were to this region and, to the Amazon as a whole. They are a community of 183 people that defends nearly 18,000 square kilometers of rainforest, a huge, huge area. And so, their ability to protect their homeland, their ability to protect this ecosystem is what's defending all of us, really, as you said, against the worst effects of climate change and catastrophic temperature rise. So I was really drawn to their story and their struggle to protect this land. Obviously, as a white American man, there were a lot of conversations that needed to happen about how this story was going to be told and the way that we were going to embark on this documentary together. And that's another part of the conversation. But it began there.
Nadinia and the whole community are very captivating. And it's just really striking that you gave them the space, I think, in your storytelling style. Like it was completely non-intrusive. We were just there with them. The Uruauau people and all the Amazonian groups have collectively faced mining, logging, clear cutting of the rainforest, farmers burning their land, rubber tapping, enslavement by Maoist militias, and generation after generation, the destruction of their homeland and the lungs of the earth. And yet, they're just so full of heart and so grounded and calm. It's so beautifully filmed, and we feel very immersed, I think, in the story, and it's inspiring. You trained in battlefield medical care and hostile environments and security in Somalia, so I'm assuming that this training has been an important part of your work, and I would love for you to talk about the experience.
Yeah, I had lived in East Africa for a while, and the sort of more hostile environments training I took part in was around a series of workshops that I helped lead for human rights lawyers and activists about using video as evidence, how they could take their really important work, advocacy work, and incorporate video and film into it in creative ways, but really serving an evidentiary purpose. And so, a lot of my work prior to working on this feature film was about how people can use film in their everyday lives and participatory video and filmmaking. And so a lot of that background of mine led into this film and making sure everybody felt empowered to pick up a camera themselves and not just remain, subjects in the kind of classical sense. And so that was a really key part in helping build a relationship between myself as an outsider and this community whose story had been stereotyped and perverted and in so many different ways historically. And so we felt like that was a really important part of making sure everybody felt ownership over the story, and not just felt it, but had it. So yeah, that work certainly informed the way that we approached the film. And I think, our basic premise with each of the different protagonists in the film, whether they were environmental defenders or environmental antagonists, people that were cutting down the rainforest, were that in the film, everybody would get the chance to speak for themselves, that we'd have no narrator, we'd have no, authoritative voice coming in, no arbiter of truth. And I think for me, at least in filmmaking, giving that space to people to speak their truth, whatever it is, a really important part of building a story that feels realistic, especially when you're dealing with complex issues that don't have clear answers. There are paths forwards that are better and worse, for sure. But understanding the problem that we're facing and all of its complexity feels like the best place to start if we're building a real solution that's going to be sustainable into the future.
Having these farmer invaders tell their story gives so much insight into their motivation, and I found myself having some empathy for them.
To understand, like, so many of our ancestors were part of colonial groups who went out, as white people, as people of European ancestry. So many cultures worldwide, have been affected by colonialism. It's really interesting to be able to sit with the emotional story of these really, I felt a lot of curiosity and a lot of interest in these people who I didn't want to demonize them. And I'm sure that's the subtlety of your filmmaking for sure. You were the cinematographer for another National Geographic documentary, The First Wave, and then also When Lambs Became Lions, among other films. So I was wondering what your thoughts on cinematographers are, especially with your background in environmentalism, environmental science, and also philosophy. Can you talk about how that background affected your storytelling?
Yeah, I love making images, the act of filming and being there physically with people on the ground. I really enjoy, and so didn't want to lose that as a director on this film. One of the things we thought a lot about was how to differentiate, in terms of the visual language of the film, the different sides of the story, because we are moving between dramatically different ideologies when we go from the forest and we're with the Uruguay indigenous community, and we move to the farm and the frontier with these settlers and colonizers, how to reflect that ideological change in a visual sense. And so one of the things we did was try to film more in a handheld, sort of fluid, organic style with the Uruguay, often closer and at wider focal lengths. And then tighter shots, more servo zooms, things like that add a bit of a mechanical, industrial feel to the footage when we're with the farmers. But yeah, I love cinematography. I think it's, a really beautiful part of the filmmaking process. And then, for me, one of the great joys of this film was sharing that cinematography with the community. So my co-cinematographer on the film is Tangai Uruguay, who is a local school teacher in the Uruguay community and took a real interest in filmmaking and the visual arts. And when COVID hit, we were not allowed to enter their indigenous territory anymore. They took, the community took the very brave decision of saying no more foreigners are allowed in our land. And of course, we respected that and spoke with the community about how we would be able to continue production without physically being there. It was a new thing. Do we have to stop? Do we have to edit the film with the footage that we have now? Is there a way to proceed? And the really clear answer we got from them was no, hell no, we're not stopping film. You just send us better audio equipment, send us cameras, and we'll figure out how to manage it from here. And so that developed into what's now a really beautiful co-production between, the outside film team, which is Danish and American, European, and this community within Brazil. And so it's one of the things I'm most proud of with the film, I think.
Very, very cool. It makes you feel really good when, they get this technology to use, without saying too much, like, using drones and being able to patrol their environment. The part of me that's like, they need to live purely is just like, oh, like go, go, go. Like this. So it's a very empowering story, I think, as well.
Yeah. Thanks.
I mean, what would you like to see happen with your film?
Yeah, I think it's important, for people like myself as an American and the rest of the audience in Provincetown, I imagine, to not think of this as a faraway issue in some foreign land. The story of colonialism, the story of manifest destiny, these are the animating principles of our own country. When you see people in the film, when you're horrified to see people burning the forest and desecrating this indigenous territory, we should also think of the ongoing case between the Lakota Nation and the United States and the desecration of the Black Hills, a sacred site for that community, with Mount Rushmore. There are so many symbols of this country, visually, ideologically, that are such an affront to these indigenous communities that continue to exist here and defend the land in our own country. So I think it's important for people to be able to make that connection when they see the film. And for us, the impact of the film is a huge thing. It's an election year in Brazil this year. Bolsonaro's up for re-election on October 2nd. So Brazil has a real opportunity to change course. And so we're focused on empowering indigenous voices, making sure that the Uruguay and other communities have the tools they need to be able to, speak for themselves, create their own films, self-advocate on the global stage. We're also focused on a couple of legislative issues, a bill that could ban the importation of deforestation-related products in both the U.S. and the European Union. So we've got really big hopes. The film's going to be available in theaters across the U.S. August 19th, and then on Disney Plus later this fall. So, tell everybody you can think of, send it to your families, and hopefully, if enough people see it, we'll be able to make some change.
So you're the co-owner of Documist, production company, a talent agency, a creative studio. So this is part of the work that you're continuing to do.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to work with some of my best childhood friends who I run the company with. And we've all been really focused on films about the natural environment, our relationship with land. And so we've got a couple films, and it's not over yet.
So folks can see it Friday at the Provincetown Film Festival at 2 p.m. So, hey, check it out. And look for it in August if you can't make it to the festival. Thank you so much for joining us today. So thank you so much, filmmaker Todd Flaherty, for being with us today, talking about your new film, which is ChrissyJudy. It's about you and your play and a drag queen and your bestie and your complicated friendship and your friend circle and finding your identity. And it's playing at the Provincetown Film Festival coming up this week. We have films from starting, I believe, there's at least one thing on Wednesday night.
Yes.
And at sundown, then the festival.
Yes. When we can let our hair down and start celebrating cinema.
Magic begins, and it goes all through Sunday. So I think the cinematography is really beautiful. It's very naturalistic. And you played Judy, and Chrissy.
I played Judy. Chrissy is the best friend, Wyatt Fenner.
Fenner. And you're both fantastic.
Thank you.
Charming.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, we're so excited. The film will be premiering. It's making its world premiere at the Provincetown Film Festival, which is exciting for us because I live here in town. I moved here in 2020, and we shot a large chunk of the film here in Provincetown. So it feels really special that we get to be making our world premiere here. And then we will be moving on to a couple other festivals this season, which is very exciting. And the film follows my character. I wrote and directed the piece, and I'm also in it. My character's name is Judy, and it follows my journey after I discovered that my best friend, Chrissy, who is like my drag sister and best friend, has decided to quit the biz and move on to bigger and better things, love, relationships. And it's the film is really like, I guess you could say it's a later in life self-discovery film about this character, Judy, figuring out who he is without his best friend by his side.
You know, I mean, I think a lot of friendships can have some air of codependency, and he's very emotionally dependent.
Oh, yes.
And negotiating his relationship, you know, when this man comes into, you know, his bestie's life. It's interesting in terms of like gay culture and like the expectations of like the heteronormative culture and like what is like basic to human beings who are coupling up and what is social convention, and is there a level of conformity that comes with like being accepted, or is it just natural to
want a partner and to couple off? Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I loved exploring in this film, and it's something that I was sort of struggling with while I was writing it, is this idea of like community versus partnership. And I think at the core, my character Judy just does not want to be alone, but doesn't necessarily know how to just be partnered with one person. And so there is this sort of codependent friendship that is between Chrissy and Judy. And it's interesting to see Judy struggle against that, because he wants to be happy for his friend who has found this great love, but it also is at the cost of his own feelings of self-worth and feelings of community and love. And he's really at odds with wanting to be supportive of his friend and wanting to find or carve out some sort of new pathway to community and friendship and love that isn't centered around monogamous partnership. Yeah. So we kind of like, you know, it's a huge iceberg, and we're just like at the very tip of it in our exploration of monogamy and that type of partnership. But we were so lucky to have Wyatt Fenner come on. He's a brilliant actor from New York. And yeah, he just plays this part so beautifully with such like brilliant humor and sensitivity. And I thought we were a great match with our, you know, back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of subtlety in your performance, and you know, although there's also flamboyant and ostentatious moments. So I would love to hear what your perspective is in terms of like film and the LGBT community, and like what you would like to ultimately, what's your mission in terms of what's your mission, and also like educating straight identifying audiences. What would you like to see happen?
So the main reason why I started writing, this is my third project. It's my first feature film. I had a web series out in 2017. And then I had a short film that actually was also in the P-Town Film Festival last year. So my mission as a filmmaker and a writer is to tell untold queer stories. I think that what we are lucky to have had over a couple decades of work is this idea of, you know, we have three major stories as queer people. We have coming out stories. We have stories of kind of unrequited or forbidden love. And then we have stories of, you know, our pandemic, the AIDS crisis, or something similar to that. And so I really hope to, in my work, dive further into the queer community and our place in society in general. And so I guess I don't necessarily hope that the straight community learns something per se. I just would love to give an opportunity for people to get a peek into a world that they may not know, and have them ask some questions and say, "Oh, I never thought of it like that. What is it like for two men to be in a relationship together, and how does that coupling work? And what are stereotypes that they fight against? What are stereotypes that they're trying to fight for?" Also, you know, it's a little it's a little difficult making queer art for queer people. So that is another mission of mine, is to, we're really lucky the P-Town Film Festival isn't necessarily queer, but we're lucky that this is a very queer friendly community, obviously. So I think that we're one of maybe like a small handful of films that identify as LGBT, which is great because it opens up our audience tenfold. We get to have these conversations that I find aren't just confined to the queer community. I've shown this film to quite a number of people at this point, and the general reaction, gay, straight, or otherwise, is I had a friendship like this. I had a deep, meaningful connection with a person that wasn't romantic, that was the platonic relationship that fizzled or fell apart in some way because romance from an outside party came between us. And I've had these conversations with someone, and I've had this type of heartbreak that we don't necessarily recognize as heartbreak. So I guess that's my hope, is just that anyone can sit down and see themselves in Judy or Chrissy or any one of the characters in the film. It's a dark comedy, so there's a lot of humor there, but there's also a lot of heart. And I think that the main takeaway that I would love for people to walk away with is how they interact with their friends and how they treat their loved ones who aren't their romantic partners.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of complexity to our friendships, and we have this term friendship, and then we have this term romance, and there's a lot of gray area in terms of like, emotional bonding and intimacy, and need, and like human need for connection. And I think like our culture is not really like super hyper community focused in general. Like, and I just mean like the Western culture is just not like, we're not all like, let's all get together and have a potluck every night. Like,
right. Totally. Right? So there's no communal living there. It's very like, I'm here and this is what I'm doing. This is my nuclear family. Yeah.
Right. So there's like this intense emotional need to connect. And then there's like the introvert extrovert that it plays out in your story. And the alienation is like hinted at because of the black and white, and so it's interesting. And like in the luminosity of the picture, and like, especially, well, I thought it was really interesting how your character Judy like is like often there's like that classic film noir, maybe like soft kind of like focus, or just like this luminescent, because I think that in a certain way, Judy's character feels really comfortable, in the limelight, but also expressing his femininity. And so to me, it seems like the drag act is part of a gender fluidity, even if it's not classifiable exactly as that. I mean, they call each other baby girl, they like nurture each other mommy sort of way, like maternal kind of way. And then this like, then there's like so it's just really interesting. Can you talk about, gender identity too? And
yeah, absolutely. So I think when I was writing this, I was trying to talk about also being an artist in our community and what it means to choose the life of an artist versus choosing a more stereotypical, capitalist lifestyle. And I was thinking, well, what is one of the most queer art forms? It's drag. And I thought, how great would it be to show a character who feels his most authentic self under caked on makeup and lashes and a wig, and expressing a part of himself that he doesn't get to every day. And in terms of the cinematography, I was really lucky. My brother is our cinematographer, Brendan Flaherty. He's a genius. And we talked about that a lot, how when we see Judy at his most alive self, there is this sort of like, veil of mystery and wonder surrounding it with the lighting. And I think that is like, in terms of gender identity and expression, something that like Judy craves and is not something that he gets to have every single day. So when he does get to have it, it is this like momentous occasion to really savor it. And when his best friend says, I'm out, I can't do this anymore, it's the struggle to say, that's when I feel my most authentic self. That's when I feel my most alive. And this is the person who helps me to do that. How can I continue to grasp at that? And yeah, I think, I feel very fortunate. I lived in New York City for 15 years and now I live here in Provincetown. So gender identity and gender expression is very fluid and a normal thing to see people exploring on both sides of the spectrum, their masculine side, their feminine side, and even exploring what those tropes mean. And I love that we got to let that spill into the film. And I hope that audiences who don't necessarily get to have that every single day can see that and feel connected to it. And that maybe people who have never been to Provincetown before can say, what's this place? Where is it? I need to go visit. So
very, very, very cool. So thank you so much, Todd.
Thank you.
Flaherty.
Yes. Irish. Yeah. Thank you, Pandora.
You were telling me in Ireland that they pronounce the H, so I'm trying to.
Yeah. Flaherty. Yeah. They'll yell at you if you don't, but we Americanize it.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Your film is playing
Thursday night, June 16th at 7 p.m. at the Art House. And then the following day, Friday, June 17th at 1:30 p.m. also at the Art House. So if you're in P-Town, please get tickets to come see it. We would love for as many people to come and experience this film as possible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pandora.
You've been listening to Healing Wisdom at Outermost Radio. All of our shows are podcasts at WOMR.org. Also check out healingwisdomradioshow.com and contact me at pandora@WOMR.org.